guys, and welcome to Film Artsy, your #1 source for all things films and movies. And Avatar 2 is one of the most anticipated movies coming up in the future that's being released by Disney. Now, the first Avatar movie was one of the biggest movies of its time, and it held that #1 spot in the box office for the largest amount of revenue for quite a long time before finally getting knocked out by Avengers Endgame, which released last year. So the stakes have never been higher with Avatar 2 and the sequel Avatar 3 sometime down the road to release later on. And even though that this movie has been delayed from the original release date it was set to have with December of 2021 all the way to December of 2022, this movie's been in full production, and we've gotten a lot of really interesting looks behind the scenes, whether it be through posts on social media or exclusive digital posts that they've done online that we're really excited about. So today we wanted to look into some of the most interesting and unique behind the scenes things that are going on for Avatar 2. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, if we remember back to some of the earlier stories that came out during earlier times of filming for this movie, it looked like there was a big push for some of this film to possibly be filmed underwater. Now, there was a production team that went to Hawaii to do some underwater shooting, and in some cases, they're going to be doing some film work underwater in favor of doing just usual CGI stuff. And while the plot points for this movie have been extremely vague, we did get a little bit of information in an interview a little while back from one of the producers talking about how characters Jake and Nitri have a family in the movie and they're forced to leave their home to go explore different regions of Pandora, which sounds really exciting because not only do we get a really awesome glimpse of Pandora in the first film, but it looks like they're going to be really expanding on the overall universe, and we're going to get to see some really cool set locations. Now, one thing that's going to be really interesting is not only are we going to see a different take, but we're going to see a really unique stakes for this movie. With Jake now having a family he needs to protect, along with seeing some really unique locales. And if this ties into some of the underwater filming stuff that is apparently being done for this movie, we get a really unique look at what we might be seeing in the full film. Now, James Cameron actually said in a recent interview that the sequel is nearly completed in totality, and they were already pretty far along into filming the third movie as well, which were being shot back to back.
Is there anything newsworthy that we should know of? I mean, when is the movie coming out in the theaters and what's going on there?
Well, COVID hit us like it hit everybody, hit us hard. We lost about 4.5 months of production. As a result of that, we've rolled around one more full year for a release in December of 22. That's been announced already. Now, that doesn't mean that I have an extra year to finish the film, because the day we deliver Avatar 2, we'll just start working on finishing Avatar 3.
Now, we've also gotten a few photos and images released along the way to give us an idea of what not only it looks like from production and what the production of this movie looks like on set, but also we get some really interesting CGI type images that give us an idea of what some objects and items might look like in this movie. For instance, this first picture was posted by John Lando on his Instagram page, and we kind of get an idea of what one of these Spec Ops uniforms would look like. We also got this other image that shows a side angle and multiple soldiers or Spec Ops soldiers moving up, which is really interesting. We actually got a really cool look at the underwater crab vehicle, which not much is really known about this, but with the supposedly high involvement of an underwater setting for this movie, seeing some sort of mech that can go on both land and underwater makes a lot of sense for this universe, and we're probably going to see a lot of conflict similar to what we had seen in the first movie happen again here as well. And real quick, we wanted to give a huge shout out to our Instagram page. If you guys didn't know, we just passed over 8,000 followers over on Instagram, so we'd really appreciate appreciate if you guys headed over to our Instagram, scrolled through some of our posts, maybe hit the like button and followed us over there. We do a lot of really interesting content if you love comic books, the MCU, DCEU, whatever it is. If you just like movies, it's a really cool page. We've been working really hard on it, and it would mean the world to us if you went over and checked it out as well. While a lot of the plot details are very hidden outside of that little interview information that we had earlier on, there is a lot of speculation that we are going to see a similar plot line, or at least some plot elements from the first movie, kind of fleshed out and expanded upon in this follow-up movie. We know from the original movie that there was this conflict where Jake had to often choose between Na'vi and humans, and while we believe that they're going to continue this conflict a little bit further, obviously, in these follow-up movies, we might see a little bit of a pullback from Jake's character. We might see some sort of temptation to side with humanity a little bit more. Now, this is just speculation, of course. However, it does seem very interesting that if they're going to pick up with these characters again, and this movie essentially has been in the works for a decade now, we're going to have to see something that brings the movie not only back to the first film, but also kind of make it where there's a plot significant enough to warrant people who went and saw this movie again, or this follow-up to the movie. Especially if they're going to make this a 3-arc or even a 4-arc type story. We know from the few set photos showing the Spec Ops characters that humanity is on Pandora again, and there's likely going to be this really big conflict and this plot to try to colonize Pandora, which will come into conflict obviously with the Na'vi, and maybe there will be really interesting points that need to be brought up, or points that are conflicted here, just to give moviegoers a plot that is exciting enough to get them to go into theaters. The visuals will likely be very amazing and top-notch, much like the first Avatar movie. However, with the second one, they definitely have to know that visuals probably won't be enough to pull people into theaters with how much we've seen the visualization of movies expanded upon in various films over the last decade. But nonetheless, the fact that Avatar had that rank so high for so long before it took a franchise that had existed for over a decade to come up and finally have its ultimate movie take the throne does say a lot about Avatar's original run and its legacy that it's built up over the years. Now, of course, it was at the turning point for 3D movies, and a lot of people wanted to go and experience 3D movies because that was, back in the day, rumored to be the next big thing. If you were a moviegoer back in 2009, everyone thought 3D television would be the norm in the future, and the fact that movies were implementing these really enhanced 3D visuals, and then Avatar came out, which just ultimately capitalized on it and brought to life a 3D film in a way that no other film was able to capture. It became this huge novelty to go see a 3D film that was visually beautiful like the first Avatar movie was, and the ticket prices were, of course, a little bit higher back then, and that's likely part of the reason why the movie ranked as high as it did. It did definitely contribute to it, but the fact that the movie wasn't bad, there was a lot of great things going on for the movie, and a lot of people really loved the movie, definitely is what solidified it at its ranking. And if you look to the fact that no other movie was able to pass it up until Avengers Endgame, that's a pretty good sentiment in itself. Now, with this big delay, it's going to allow production another year to wrap up on the film. Now, we believe most of the filming for this is already done, but the main plan is to release each Avatar movie 1 year after another to finish out the movies that Disney has greenlit. So it might be the case that Disney isn't wanting to stagger these movies out, and even if Avatar 2 is pretty much done, the decision to delay Avatar 2 might be so that between Avatar 2 and Avatar 3, the movies will be releasing closely enough together rather than putting a larger gap in the middle. And since production was originally intended to just be filmed right one after another and almost simultaneously, it's likely easier for them just to keep going and take that extra year to get these movies finished up. But what do you guys think of Avatar 2 and this behind the scenes information? We'd love to know where your guys' heads at. Do you think this movie will end up actually being good and hold up to the legacy the first one had? We aren't too sure the possibility of this movie being able to pass up something like the original movie or Avengers Endgame in the box office, but there's a possibility it could still rank really high. But let us know what you're thinking in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this uploaded every single day of the week. We'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video.
I'm about to.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
See you guys.